Let's unbox the Vintage Collection 3.75-inch scale, the Armorer's Forge playset from The Mandalorian.
Varykino. If it's Star Wars, we collect it.
Hello there, thanks for visiting Varykino. It's an exciting time as a vintage collection collector here in New Zealand. We've got a new wave hitting a local retailer that's very exciting, and we can get our hands on The Mandalorian, the Armorer's Forge playset. Now this one technically isn't in stock in New Zealand, but it is in stock in the Disney Store New Zealand website, which ships from Australia, often for free if you add in a few things to your cart. So this one arrived this week. I'm super excited. When I saw this revealed in that Hasbro live stream a little while back, I really wanted to add this to my collection, and I wasn't sure if it would be available at an affordable price for us here in New Zealand, but I got it shipped for free from the Disney Store Australia website, and it is here, and I can't wait to open it up. It's going to be exciting. Of course, we've got this new carded version of the Armorer included inside the box. We're going to open that figure up as well and construct the playset. It's going to be so much fun. Thank you so much for hanging out with me today. Coming up really soon, I'll take a closer look at everything inside the box. We'll go over all of the details, but first let's take a quick look at the box. The playset comes packaged in a very sturdy corrugated cardboard box, and again we have that iconic vintage style packaging inspired by the Kenner boxes from the 1970s and 80s, and I really like the color tone used for this particular front graphic here. Of course, we've got very sort of fiery red through to yellow. Of course, that fits really well with a Forge playset, but the color tone and the gradient is very reminiscent of some of the original 1970s packaging. Especially, I'm thinking of the Land Speeder, had that same sort of gradient there on the box art, which is kind of really fun and nostalgic, even though, of course, this is a very new playset design. We've got the Mandalorian logo here at the top in red, as always, and a single chrome racetrack design encircling the large printed graphic here on the front. Now, of course, when we have the backing cards, we always have sort of like an in-world photograph or a render promotional still of the character or the scene, but when it comes to the playsets, we have toy photography. There isn't any sort of actual shots from the Mandalorian series used on this box, as we'll see as we go over all of the different angles here. We've got a really nice toy photography promo shot here of the actual playset used on the front. We can see the components. They haven't photoshopped the lines out. I can see where these pieces are going to join it together. We've got the Armorer figure out and here on display, although she is actually a carded figure as noted here. It says the Armorer Lakeside Covert World, because of course we already do have an Armorer figure in the standard vintage collection line that was sold separately, but this one is only available with this playset. And of course we can see scattered around the rest of the graphic here on the front is all of the accessories. There is a lot here. We've got Grogu here as well. He is not carded. He doesn't have a separate card here. I'm assuming he's just going to be sort of in the packaging alongside the other accessories, but I'm really curious to see how everything's going to be packaged. There is a lot of fine detail. We've got helmets, we've got tools, we've got this little cabinet over to the side, we've got a bit of an anvil accessory over here. This insert here, if I just bring it up closer, it shows us a nice grid layout of all of the components there. There is a lot. There is quite a number of tools. We've got the two characters, the actual sort of playset itself, helmets. It looks like there is a backpack for the Armorer as well, and that sort of anvil accessory there. Now let's move on to the side, because there is some really cool toy photography on this box. Of course, we've got the large playset name here on the right and some really nice close-up shots here. We've got the Armorer figure posed in front of her forge, a nice close-up shot of Grogu showing his little chest plate there with a signet. And we've got the Armorer working with her tools, forging a piece of Beskar armor. Moving on to the top of the box, a little bit similar to the front, but this time the Armorer is posed off to the side working with the anvil. The layout is very much the same as that large graphic on the front. Now on the other side, we've got a few more insert shots here. We've got Grogu with some helmets. We've got a little bit of the back angle showing that jetpack on the Armorer's back. Really curious to see how that's going to work, because this one comes with a soft goods sort of faux fur cloak there, so I'm not quite sure how that jetpack's going to attach. Very keen to see that. And then we have have a nice close-up shot of the armorer working with her tools at her forge there. Okay, the underside, pretty plain, just a barcode, copyright text, all of that kind of stuff. Moving on to the back, we have the exact same graphic as the front. Of course, we can see that printed there. We have the attention logo in a different language. We still have that insert shot showing the carded version of the armorer figure there, but we have a couple of other sort of notes here on the front. We only have the Kenner logo on the back. We also have Hasbro, Disney, and the Vintage Collection logo here, kind of matching in with that chrome racetrack design. We also have the copyright noting Lucasfilm, Kenner, Hasbro, 2024, all of that kind of stuff. But I really like that front design. It's just so clean. I love those sort of fiery, warm colors. And of course, this little insert here mentioning the carded figure very much reminds me of the sort of promo stickers that we saw on vintage Kenner action figures in the 70s and 80s. It just looks amazing. I love the sturdy cardboard, which means that once you've opened everything up, you can put it on your display because it's nice and sturdy. In terms of the actual physical size of this box, if I bring in a carded figure, you can see it is the exact same height as a carded figure. So if you want to put it on your display alongside carded figures, it's going to look really nice. The colors, the design, everything looks amazing. So let's get this one open. I'm going to open up the box by just carefully snipping through the tape. Thankfully, the tape is kind of against that back edge, not to the front edge, so nice and easy to get things open. Okay, I'm really keen to see how everything's packaged. It's quite a sturdy box, and it kind of feels like the weight is mostly down one end of the box as well. So I'm expecting that to be mostly the play set itself, the big forge piece. Okay, so I can see the carded figure there on the top of this box already. Okay, let's see. We've got some instructions all the way down the bottom of the box. Let's get those out as well. I'm always thankful that there are instructions because there's going to be some assembly for these components here. And we've got the little copyright insert there. Okay, let's pull the carded figure out. She looks amazing. Very cool. Nice backing card art there as well. And that was just kind of sitting with the cutout there. There's a little bit of a cutout, so the bubble is nice and protected there. And it is unpunched as well. That looks pretty nice. Very tidy. I'm always a little bit nervous, because if you do want to keep your figure on its backing card, you want to make sure it's all nice and mint, but you can't see that before you buy it. So I'm really thankful that that looks like that has arrived all okay. And here we can see how it's all kind of laid out. This end feels a lot heavier than this end. So let's just get stuck in and start pulling some pieces out. We've got some plastic bags with some of the forge accessory pieces here. Oh, look, we've got the mythosaur symbol to put on the back wall of the playset. We've got Grogu just tucked in here with some of the helmets, as I kind of suspected. He's pictured a lot in with the helmets there. So let's pull. Oh, everything's going to come out together. Oh, okay. We've got lots to go here. Oh, okay. So this is the cabinet. That's quite large. Wow. Okay, cool. That's kind of fun to open. I was wondering if I'd have to be putting some stickers on or anything like that, but that looks like that is actually all applied, ready to go. Cool. Okay. And then in here, we've got some, looks like we've got some cords there to cut and some more sellotape to go. So I've got to get out my scissors out and start getting some of this packaging off because I really want to see the play set. Okay, so yep, we've got it all sort of banded there onto the cardboard. We've got a lot of cardboard here to deal with. Nice to see that everything's packaged very well. Nothing's rattling around. So we can see that we've got the rock formation there. Doesn't look like we've got much in the way of a paint app on that. That looks like plain plastic there. Let's get this piece of cardboard out of the way. And we've got those pieces. Going to pop them off to the back. And we've got another piece of plastic. We've got that piece I'm going to pop over here. Now we've got a big flat piece here. Just going to go in from the side. You can kind of see it tucked in here. I get this cardboard. Thankfully, everything's kind of popping out okay. I can get this to let go. There's a flat ground piece here, but I'm just going to get these pieces out. So this looks like this is going to be the top of the play set. Okay, going to snip the sellotape, get that out. Okay, wow, okay. It was really, I couldn't tell how this was going to be. I was worried I was going to have to be putting in all of the little blue flames in there. That is a really cool detail there for the base part. You can see that that is translucent blue. So I guess if you really want to, you can put some LEDs in there, really sort of add a bit of a lighting effect. And this part is, we've got the top part. That looks cool. A lot of detail there. Got a little bit of cardboard dust that we'll be getting rid of before we start assembling everything. And now I've just got to get the base part out of the box because this one's kind of really tucked in here. I've got to get these flaps done so I can slide this out. There's an interesting texture on this base part there. Okay, a lot of cardboard in this box, which is good, isn't it? We want everything stored carefully. So this looks like this is going to be the base. We've got some cardboard dust, and hopefully everything's going to click together well. I'm always a little bit anxious because some of these join connector pieces, they are a bit unforgiving, and once they're connected they don't let go, so you want to make sure that you get it right the first time. So okay, let's get everything sorted and let's get this assembled. With the packaging all out of the way, I've now got all of the components out of the box so we can get into building. And while I was putting everything on the desk, I realized that there is just a really subtle color tone difference in these plastic pieces, which does make sense because the dirt on the ground wouldn't necessarily be the same as the rock wall. The color difference is a little bit more clear when you sort of look at the underside in terms of the different colors. And sometimes I think that that kind of works so that it doesn't just look like all one piece of sort of brown plastic there. But we've got an instruction sheet which is very helpful. We have 5 steps here, so I'm going to assemble all of the pieces in the sequence here that is laid out. We're going to put the mythosaur skull on the back wall, attaching the parts, and then we've got a few notes on the back of just sort of how to use the other accessory parts. Just as a quick note, I think it's really interesting that on the back of this instruction sheet, it notes that the 3 accessory helmets that are included in the bag with Grogu, we've got them there. It says the helmets are compatible with Bo-Katan Kryze, Paz Vizsla, the Mandalorian, and the Mandalorian Mines of Mandalore. And doing a quick little look through the bag, I can see that they do actually have those pegs that make it available to swap in with the heads, helmets of those figures that do have them. They are different colors. You can see we've got like a green and a red and some yellow in there. So they're going to be not accurate, but you know, if you're trying to sort of create a bit of a Mandalorian, a sort of group there, mix and match the pieces. So yeah, it says they're of course sold separately there, but I thought that was kind of fun that they actually note that you can swap these helmets with the figures that have that functionality there. On the back, we've also got a very simple instruction on how to put the armorer's jetpack on. The jetpack is included in the carded figure. The anvil, we've got 2 different shapes, a rounded one and a flat one, and they're showing that we can open up that sort of toolkit and put the accessories in there and sort of open up the components there. So this is the main part. Let's get stuck in and get building. I'm going to be following along the numbers, which of course we're starting off with the back wall. Just going to quickly open up these bags as we go. I don't want all the accessories kind of rattling around on the desk here. So I've got the mythosaur skull to start out first. Okay, let's have a quick little look at this. It's cast in a metallic silver plastic. Looks quite nice, sort of hollow there. We can sort of see through the eyes. The nose isn't hollow. Just going to be clearing the little bits of sort of fluff and dust off these pieces. I like the shine of it. It's not that kind of vac metallized, you know, silver there, but I do like the shine of this silver plastic. Nice tidy details, and it's kind of got a little bit of a sort of a Beskar sort of effect to it a little bit with some of the way that the light's catching on these sort of different angles there. Okay, so nice shaped connector piece there, so we're not going to get it wrong. This looks like, you know, pretty sort of standard little section here. Quite of a tight fit, but it just goes in there with tension. And that looks really cool. Okay, part 1 done. Okay, so now step 2 is to connect the back wall to the base. Now we've got very specific connectors, so we're only going to be able to put it up the right way, which is very helpful. Hopefully this won't take too much force to connect into place. It's going to snap together though. Okay, I was expecting sort of a loud crack when that sort of snapped into place, but it's just more sort of just pushing in there with tension. Can see those pieces connected through. So now I've got that. I've got a tighter fit on this side than that side, so that might take just a bit of a wiggle to kind of bed in there nicely, but now we're getting the walls up. Step 3 is attaching the ceiling part to the sort of ceiling piece here. So this looks like this one's going to snap in very securely. And I don't know that it looks pretty symmetrical. I don't know that there's a front or a back. We do have a little sort of those parts where they sort of cut the plastic off. So I'm going to probably try and point that more towards the back of the component here, just so I don't have to sort of see that it's so prominent. And hopefully that's not going to be too hard. Okay. Again, oh, I can still spin it. Okay, so that's not going to lock in completely. I can spin that around. That's nice. Okay, step 4 is adding this part over the top. Everything's going together with just a nice tension. That just slipped on there nicely. I was worried it was going to really bite down and be the sort of ones where you can't take it apart. To be honest, I think you could possibly take this apart if you wanted to. Okay, so we've done step 4, and step 5 is bedding down the sort of the actual sort of forge part here. Now this one does have cutouts, so it's going to go down on a specific orientation, but I don't... Ooh, okay, so there is a panel on this side. So I'm just going to have a quick look. I'm pretty sure that this panel here is going to sit on the side. Definitely in the instructions, it doesn't actually, the instructions, it doesn't have the picture on that angle. So I can't see which side I want to put that on. But a lot of the photography was kind of this angle. So I don't know. I guess I'm hoping, because this side we've got a sort of a prominent plastic cutoff piece there, but just taking a quick look at the box, it looks like this is actually the side that's going to face out this way. So I guess I'm going to follow that, because on the toy photography it's got a tool sitting here, and that sort of control panel is more towards the left. So even though personally I kind of want the control panel here, I'm just going to follow the toy photography for now. And maybe if that's just going to sit in there, is that going to click in? It's kind of tight. Okay, let's see. It's a little bit tricky to pop this one in with the whole thing assembled now. That one is definitely kind of fighting me. Okay, there we go. It's prickly at the top, so I can't press down like this. I'm having to sort of press down, but I think that is bedded down, but that's not like snapped into place. I could just as easily pull that out, and we can see that we've got a nice gap there. So if you are handy with electronics and like to add some light effects to your play sets, there's a nice internal cavity there, because we can see that translucent plastic. Or perhaps for toy photography, you can even use your cell phone sort of torch there underneath to get some sort of ambient lighting there. But there, if we get that plastic out of the way, that is the forge assembled. That looks pretty cool. Nice and big, much taller than a figure. And that wasn't too hard to assemble. Okay, so let's quickly move on and just check out the last couple of accessories that we've still got in the bag here. And then we'll get on to the armorer herself. Of course, I'm very excited. She is one of my favorite characters from the Mandalorian show. I loved her in the first season, even though she didn't get quite as much screen time. So I'm so excited to see how prominent she became in the later episodes. And now she's got her own playset, which is just fantastic. She's so synonymous with sort of the Beskar and those scenes, isn't she? Okay, so let's start off with Grogu, our first character of the play set. He's so tiny. It's kind of funny that he didn't get his own backing card, only the armorer did, but he's so small, I don't know that it really matters too much. So in terms of articulation, he's got a tiny articulated head. I can move his head from side to side. Are his arms articulated? They kind of look like they are. They definitely look, oh yes, okay, that looks like they're on tiny little ball attachment points. This one, I can just kind of see that part there. I can wiggle his arm around. This one, yep, I can move it. Okay, so he can move his arms. So tiny. There, Really nice little articulation. Of course, he's not going to need too much movement there. So we've got him in sort of a unique little sculpt here with his little vest open, with that Beskar sort of chest plate there, with the Mudhorn signet there, and his tiny little sort of chainmail shirt just visible at the top there as well. He's got black eyes, a little bit of a pink touch there to his ears as well, green hands. He's even got little feet painted and sculpted there. Pretty flat, but kind of a fun little detail there. Overall, pretty tidy. Interesting sort of little cutout here with the plastic just on that collar section there. But yeah, very nice. Nice tidy silver paint. Everything looks good. Very cute. I think it's nice to have him in there because he's kind of so small. He doesn't really need his own sort of VC number backing card sold separately. So throwing him in a set like this is just a nice little inclusion there. So we've got the sort of the stand for the anvil. I like the metallic plastic that we've got used here. So it does have a little section here. So it looks like we sort of attach them with that little, it's got like a little tool section facing this way. So we've got sort of a round anvil shape for sort of casting, I guess, his chest plate or shoulder pieces and things like that. Or we've got more of that sort of iconic long flat anvil shape, again made out of that same metallic plastic there. I think I'm going to put on the round one for now. Very simple, just circular peg attachments, because of course you may want to swap them around. That just goes on there nicely. So I can pose the armorer, forging some armor there, because the tool that she has included in her backing card is like a fiery sort of hot version of the chest plate. So I think I kind of want that tool set up there. And of course, if I swap that over, I can pull that off and I can attach the sort of classic sort of anvil shape there for making other shapes of Beskar armor. I like that I can swap those around, and hopefully these pieces are going to fit in that sort of tool cabinet there. And of course we've got 3 tools, not quite the same metallic metal. So this one's a very sort of almost a Beskar silver. These ones are a darker metallic, but holding them up, they look very similar to the sort of the darker, not quite as sort of glossy metallic plastic as the forged plastic. Kind of need to hold them over here so I can see the color of them. So they are sort of a bit bendy, but they're not articulated. That's just a sculpted hinge. It's not actually going to close. You can't sort of use them in a functional manner. They're just going to bend there. I'm hoping the armor will hold these quite nicely. Tiny little tongs there. These are very wobbly, very, very spindly and thin and flexible. I've got just that sort of little crimped end there at the tips there, but kind of fun. Just gonna slip that there. I can stand there for now. And then we've kind of got the scoop for sort of collecting up molten Beskar and pouring it. It's kind of like a big ladle. I don't know the correct terms for working with sort of forging steel and metal, so I'm just going to call it the metal scoop. But that's pretty nice there. Again, made out of the same kind of color plastic as the rest of the tools. But yeah, based on the sort of the artwork, it looks like you can kind of stick them in the sort of the edging here. They just kind of fit there. That's kind of fun. And of course we have also the 3 helmets that were alongside Grogu. Just kind of, I don't know, I'm going to have to sit down and watch The Mandalorian. Not that I ever need excuses to, but to see if these are actually background Mandalorian helmets or whether Hasbro just, you know, took some artistic license. This one looks very much in the style of Din Djarin's helmet, but it is green plastic with a black visor. We've got a silver trim, sort of brow trim across the top, and we've got this interesting sort of swoosh, this silver line heading towards the back there. So very nice. And of course they have those pegs, which means that you can swap them with the figures that have this functionality, like they were included on that instruction sheet there. So we've got the green one. We've got the red one. This one is styled after Paz Vizsla, the sort of the heavy infantry sort of Mando there, with a red plastic, a dark muted red. We've got a attached sort of rangefinder detail there on the side, a little bit more of an extra detail there, and we have a black visor edged with silver, No detail painted there on the back, again with that peg so you can swap it. And then we have the one, oh, we've got a tiny little moving rangefinder on the one that is styled, inspired by Bo-Katan, but this one is silver with a yellow kind of night owl sort of design painted there on the front, and a tiny little rangefinder that is articulated so you can move that one up and down. This one is a silver, different silver to here. It's a little bit lighter than the sort of metallic plastic I used for the actual forge itself. A bit more sort of raw Beskar almost there. And of course that one also has the peg for attaching. So they do kind of sit a little bit awkwardly if you put them on the ground because of those pegs extending from the underside. They do kind of extend down. The Bo-Katan one, if I sort of push it towards the back, I can get that one to sit down. I wonder if I can do that a little bit more to these others. They're just going to extend a little bit further. So they're a little bit awkward in terms of just sort of sitting there on display. They do kind of, I kind of wanted there to be maybe like a little made up rack or something like that that they could sit on, because in terms of actually the playset, they're just kind of sitting on the ground. Perhaps I'll just have to tuck them in that tool chest there, but this looks really cool. I can't wait to get the armor out and kind of get the tools and everything set up for a bit of scene building there. So let's take a closer look at the carded version of the armor that came in this particular playset, Lakeside Covert World. So of course the armorer's forge has to include a figure of the armorer herself, and in keeping with the modern era of the vintage collection line of playsets, this figure comes on its own unique vintage collection backing card, which has its positives and negatives. If you like to open your figures, something about this one being hard to get because of its higher price tag inside a playset makes it a little bit harder to open. And if you do like to keep your figures on their cards, you have to buy a whole playset in order to get a hold of this one. But I understand the tricky lines that Hasbro have to tread here to try and keep all collectors happy, so I think this is a reasonably good compromise. You just have to kind of work with the situation depending on your particular aspect of collecting, whether you like to keep your figures open or carded. But I really like the sort of added bonus of having a really nice backing card. I do keep all of my vintage collection backing cards. I like the art, the vintage style. It's really cool. Of course, as always, we have the black rectangular backing card inspired by the vintage Kenner backing cards from the 70s and 80s. We have the Mandalorian logo here in red at the top, the Star Wars logo, and the single chrome racetrack encircling the character art here on the side. We do have a small sort of notch here for the hanger, but this one is unpunched, which is quite nice. Of course, it doesn't have to go on a store shelf. It was stored safely inside the Forge playset box. Now for this particular armorer figure, we have a bit of a subline here, Lakeside Covert World. We have a red accent color here with the white font. The red color, of course, is also behind the figure there. I really like the art here. She's a little bit off to the left, a little bit cut off by the plastic bubble, but I like the focus on her tool here as she's crafting a circular piece of Beskar armor there. And we've got a little bit of the forge lighting here in the bottom, which I think is really important because it really does tie this particular figure in to the playset. I like that we've got those lights there as well. So now we can see the figure herself. She does have a soft goods cloak, but on my particular figure, it is very hidden down the back. I can just make it out, tipping the figure and looking at it from the back. It's very hidden, so I'm hoping it's going to look a little bit better when I get it out and sort of fluff it up a little bit and get it into position. We have a jetpack here. We have the tool that she is holding here in the promo image there, which is nice. We can see the Mudhorn signet there as she's forging that chest plate for Grogu, and we also have her iconic sort of hammer tool there as well. I can't wait to get this figure out. Now on the back, we've got the modern style of vintage collection backing cards with that accent color used across the top half of the card there. This one is a VC331. We've got the backing card image there. I think it's fun that we don't actually have the hanger notch there pictured there either. And we can see the toy here posed with the two accessories, and we can see that soft goods cape there a little bit better. It's a little little bit more forward on this image there. I think she looks really cool holding those tools there. Now we've got the Vintage Collection logo there. The barcode is missing because of course this isn't supposed to be sold on its own, so it's kind of different. Of course, we usually have a barcode in this section, but the barcode is on the exterior forged playset box, so that's missing on this one. We do have a blurb for the character here as well. The armor keeps vital Mandalorian traditions alive, even if a people must remain hidden to survive. She sagely advises Din Djarin on the quest he must undertake to return to the Mandalorian fold. So I like that. I think that's a really nice bio there about her, not about the Mandalorian series. That's really nice. Okay, so in case you're wondering, I do have an earlier released armor figure because I really wanted to see these two side by side. So this one is VC179, an earlier release. So she comes with two tools. They both have the hammer, but these tongs are a playset accessory with this version. Here they are packaged alongside the figure. Now I like looking at backing cards. I think it's fascinating to see how they change them up sometimes. This one, very golden toned in terms of we've got that sort of yellow, almost mustard tone accent color with black font. Over here, it's a vibrant red with a white font. And of course, I love the color tones here of the sort of the fiery hot furnace there. And we've got the yellow tones that match really well with her helmet there. She has a plastic cape here on this one. I'm really keen to see the soft goods one there, but it's really fun to see how different these two look. The cooler tones here with the sort of the fiery red coming through with the melted sort of forged Beskar armor piece there. Not quite sure why they changed the color so much. I usually sort of prefer it when the accent color kind of follows the character through different versions here. They have changed the color between these two backing cards. And looking at the back, of course, we can see the earlier version has that older style, a little bit more inspired by the Kenner era, where we have the little previews of other figures in the line, the black and the double chrome racetrack design on the back there. You can see this one does have a barcode because of course it was sold separately there. And also, just a quick note, we've got that plastic reinforcement sticker to help sort of protect the hanger when it's, you know, on a toy store shelf. Because this one isn't really intended to ever be hung, we don't have a plastic reinforcement piece there on the top of that cardboard. It is just a straight cardboard there. So if you do punch it out, you got to be a little bit more careful with that. I don't know if I can pick a favorite out of these two. I feel like in terms of the art, she's a little bit more centered into the side panel here. On this one, she's a little bit more cut off to the side, but of course she comes with a playset. So I like the inclusion of a little bit of more of her environment, the actual forge on this one. So I think it works really well. And I think this one, we can actually see a lot more crisper, clearer detail. This one feels a little bit more like a promotional shot. This one feels like a screen grab. It feels a little bit, you know, from a shot from the actual series, whereas the crispness and the clearer detail on this one I really quite like. So I try not to play favorites, but it's interesting to see these side by side. I am going to be opening up this one really soon because I do want to see the loose figures side by side. So stay tuned for that one coming up in the next couple of days. But for now, let's open up the new Forge playset carded figure. Now I have the armor figure out of the plastic packaging alongside her 3 accessories, so let's get stuck in and check out her details. And normally I start with the head and work my way down, but this time I'm going to start off with the soft goods cloak because this is so different. Now of course when you buy the Forge you can't see the carded figure inside, and I tend to be a little bit more particular about painted details and accessories and things like that, so I was a little bit anxious about the soft goods cape because it was a little hard to see how it was going to work on that sort of promotional imagery. And when I first saw my carded figure, it looked completely hidden behind her. And I know that's often the case, especially with cloaks on like Darth Vader. They're often folded and sort of tucked in behind the figure, so you can't see them, and they don't look messy while they're in their bubble in case you want to keep them carded. But I almost couldn't see it, and for a minute I was worried it was missing, but I could just see it tucked in the back. But because I couldn't see it over the shoulders, I was a little bit worried about how it was going to be attached, because I always feel like it's the most accurate to see it over the shoulders. And when I got it out, of course I had to have a look at it, and of course the first thing I saw was that it is not glued or sort of attached in to the plastic of the figure. It is attached with elastic under the arms, which means that you can actually move it around or completely remove it if you want to. I'm not going to remove it. Mine was just a little bit sort of tucked in, so I've got a little bit of a fold here on this side, but I'm sure that's going to straighten out. Now, if you've ever worked with faux fur, you know that once you cut that edge, it sheds a lot of fibers, so I do apologize if I'm going to get a lot of fluff on my hands, and I'm going to be very careful about the way that I handle this cut edge, because it is going to shed if I sort of fluff it up more than it already has been. But the first thing I did was kind of move those elastic bands around at the shoulder, and that meant that I could reposition that soft goods over the shoulders, and now she looks so much better than she did in the bubble. And I think that's a little bit of a shame for the collectors that will be keeping this particular figure on its backing card, because you really couldn't see it, and this is the major distinguishing feature from the earlier versions. So I thought it was a shame that it was tucked in so far behind there. So you can just make out the elastic sort of tucked in there around the shoulders, and you can see the tiny little stitching lines sort of cutting into the fur, because it's kind of attached almost like a backpack there with the straps around. You can just sort of make that out underneath her arms there. But I really like that attachment style. Sometimes the soft goods are sort of inserted at the shoulder, they're sort of glued in, you can't move them like that. So I was really excited that I was able to adjust it forward, and she looks cool. There are a number of collectibles. I think my favorite versions of the collectibles featuring the armor are the ones where they have used faux fur, like the Gentle Giant mini bust and that special version of the Black Series 6-inch figure of the armor. They have faux fur, and I just think it's such a distinctive part of her outfit. It just feels more correct to have it being a soft goods component. Now, this particular figure does have a jetpack, and I wanted to know how this was going to work. Sometimes you've got to swish the cape completely over to the side, but no, we've got a cutout here in the back, and if I carefully lift up the cloak, you can see that we've got a fairly large peg hole there in the back of the figure. So you got to sort of move this a little bit and line that up. I'm already getting some fluff on my hands. We can line up the hole in the cloak with the hole on the figure, so we can attach that jetpack nicely over the fluff. You don't need to sort of pull it to the side. I didn't really want to be moving this soft goods cape around a lot, just because I wanted to sit nice and flat and just look really nice. So really happy. There is a cutout around the neck, so you can pull it forward and sort of get it bedded down around there. I'm probably going to spend a little bit of time carefully adjusting it, because I don't want to sort of play with the fluff too much and start getting all the fibers off. But yes, there's a nice little cutout. It's got a nice rounded shape there. Just looks really nice. I'm so excited by this. I was a little bit nervous when I first saw it on the backing card there. So very excited. Okay, so let's go through the rest of the details of the figure. Now, I really like her helmet. I'm so excited that Hasbro has announced that they will be offering the Armorer's helmet in their Black Series 1-to-1 sort of role-play replica line, because it's so unique. I love it. And the coloring on this one is really nice. So of course it's not a vac metallized sort of golden finish, but hers is always like a darker gold. Hers isn't a 3PO gold. It's much darker, a little bit more weathered. And I think they got a really nice finish on this one with the gold paint. There is a weathering sort of finish to it. You can kind of see on some areas towards the back here that there is a weathering over it. It's just a very soft sort of wash that just catches the light in a few places, which I think sort of takes that sort of bright gold sort of C3PO sort of gold finish off. It just tones it down a little bit, and I think really makes this just awesome. And of course, as I am a little bit particular, I like the fact that on my particular figure, the black painting for the visor is very nicely lined up with the actual sculpted visor details. That always throws me off. We don't have face details on Mandalorian helmet figures to sort of nitpick about in terms of digital printing placement, but if the black is misaligned, it really throws me off. And because of course, as I mentioned, you couldn't see this carded figure before buying the box, and I had to get mine online, so there was absolutely no chance. Some figures, you know, back in the old days, they kind of had like a little cutout window so you could see the figure before buying the vehicle or the playset, but now because of the way they package the vintage collection figures, they're tucked right inside the box. You can't see them before buying them. But I really like this helmet. The details looks really nice. I love that finish. Very cool. Okay, so let's move down the rest of the figure. It's going to be very similar to earlier versions, but I just like to check out the details of all of my figures. We've got a really nice kind of that warm coppery sort of metallic finish here on her chest plate. This doesn't appear to have any kind of wash over it, but I really like the way that it's catching the light. It's got a little sort of almost a subtle iridescent finish to it with the way that it's just catching the light and creating a little bit more of a red shine there. Now the shoulder pieces are not metallic. They're very close in color, though. It's more of sort of a warmer sort of orangey brown there on the shoulders. And we've got that really subtle sort of green tone for her undersuit there. We can see there at the sleeves, we've got that same accent color as the shoulder piece coming down again on her sort of undersleeve. Of course, the Mandalorians wear lots of layers. They've kind of got that vest section and then sleeves. And we've got those quilted gloves there with a bit more of a caramel brown color. Accent stripe there at the edge there. Really nice details. Of course, we're going to check out the articulation very shortly as well. Moving down now, I'm pretty sure, yep, we've got a flexible plastic for her skirt section, which looks like that is sculpted in conjunction with the belt. So the plastic's going to come all the way up to here. Going to be interesting to see how much articulation she's going to have at the torso though, because this is very high-waisted. But if I just quickly move her arm out of the way, we've got a side split here going almost all the way up to the belt there at the side, because of course generally these plastic components can limit the articulation and freedom of movement in the lower legs there, but we can see we're going to get pretty good flexibility here with the plastic. I don't like to stress too much in terms of sort of pulling them open too much. We do have a curved top to the split to try and help avoid further splitting the plastic up, but it does happen, so I am going to be a little bit careful there. I don't like to stress the side seam splits on my figures there, but that looks like we're going to be able to sort of flex the leg out in front a pretty good amount there. And we also have that same seam split here on the other side, nicely kind of tucked in there. It's not, you know, not completely tight, but it's kind of sitting there open. Looks pretty good. We can see the belt section coming all the way up there in the back. Some really nice sculpted detail, a little bit hidden underneath her soft goods cape there in the back, but I really like that sculpted detail on the back of her skirt there. Some really nice detail. And of course, let's move on to the pants. Pretty standard, you know, kind of just a slightly loose fitting pants there with some interesting side seam details. That's more of where her costume details come in there. The side seams coming down to her boots, where we've got that sort of same almost metallic color as the chest plate for that band just above her ankle and her toe caps there. Very nice. I don't think she's got any kind of extra details there. I don't see any buckles or anything, just the kind of those spats kind of on her lower legs there, the kind of slightly sort of baggier, sort of held in place with these bands there, but some really nice costume detail. So as I mentioned earlier, I haven't opened up my original version of the armor figure. I will be doing that very shortly. So I'll be able to do a little bit more of an in-depth side-by-side comparison in terms of what parts have potentially been tweaked or retooled compared to the original version, painting subtle differences and things like that. And of course, that first version has a plastic sort of sculpted, textured cape here in the back instead of soft goods. So I'm really looking forward to opening up that one and seeing them side by side. I'm just fascinated by the attachment. I was not really sure what to expect on the back of that one, but I'm really happy with that. Does sort of ripple a little bit as I'm shifting it around. Of course, the articulation at the arms, I'm a little bit nervous about because I really don't want to play with the placement of the elastic too much, but I know I'm going to want to pose her with her forged tools in her hands. So her hands are not going to be straight down by her sides. So let's get stuck in and check the articulation. So very easy movement on her helmet there. That's really nice because of course her alongside many of the Mandalorians like Din Djarin, they don't have, you know, sort of facial expressions to go on. So if you want to sort of create some interesting scenes, you have to use head movement and sort of body language a lot to get the poses in, but this really nice movement here. Like that's quite a deep look. Sometimes even on the human figures, I can't tip the chin down very much, but I'm getting all the good range of motion here with her. That's really nice. And it's kind of starting to move the torso around. So let's go there next. So I can already wiggle her side to side. That's kind of nice. And she moves aside, sort of rotating left and right very nicely. She's not fighting me and she's not snapping back to center. So that's really nice to see. I always get a little bit worried, especially she has got a very narrow waist. Of course, the female characters tend to have more slender frames in the figure form, of course. Now I can tip her torso back a little bit. We get a little bit of sort of a shadow underneath there, and moving forward, that's quite a limit. She's not really going to bend forward that much because the chest plate is just completely hitting the top of the rubber skirt here. So that's not going to flex forward, but we can make her lean back a little bit. So nice movement there through the torso, sort of abdomen section there. Let's check out the arms. I'm going to move them very slowly because I don't want to stress that elastic. So you can kind of see the elastic a little bit more clearer there, just tucked around the sleeve. I can move her arm up, and the soft goods cape kind of just moves with it quite nicely. So, and we'll just test her arm out to the side. I believe, I'm not going to test it. If you want to, you could possibly take the elastic off if it's just really sort of looped around. I feel like I'd be able to take that off if I really wanted to, or just cutting the elastic. I'm having a little bit of a hard time getting her arm all the way out to the side. It's a little bit stiff on mine. It's just fighting me a little bit. Sometimes figures straight out of the packaging, I can get it to there. It's kind of fighting me going up a little bit higher, so I don't really want to stress that too much. It's getting to about there, and then I'm fighting with the plastic. So sometimes it's just because they're new and just a little bit stiff out of the packaging, and sometimes I feel like I'm putting a little bit too much stress on the plastic itself. It doesn't really want to move there. So that was a really smooth movement at the elbow. Very nice. I'm going to want to get a lot of movement with her elbow, more than sort of raising her arms up above her head. So that's really nice. Of course, we can rotate her arms out to the side. Very nice, smooth movement. I can move her arm up and around, just not all the way up there. So we've got side to side rocking on the gloves, but the kind of the quilted section here is going to limit some of that side to side movement. Of course, we can rotate as usual. I'm not really going to get much else there. Just going to test that other arm, see if this one wants to come out to the side a little bit better. Just being very gentle because of that soft goods attachment point. This one is also very stiff. Yeah, I'm not, oh, that's, I don't want to fight that one actually. That one's very stiff again. I can swivel it around, but it's very, very stiff in terms of raising the arm. Very easy on the elbows though. So I don't know if the elastic is really just getting in the way there, and I don't want to stress that attachment point. Sometimes these tiny stitches are very, very hard to repair and make them look good as new, but this looks pretty good in terms of the poses I'm going to want to have her raising her tools while standing at her forward, and I can move her hands, her gloves around pretty easily. Nice movement at the elbows, which is the main articulation point that I'm going to want for holding her tools. So moving on to the lower legs, we do have that sort of upper thigh swivel point there, so you can sort of rotate the legs out to the side. Sometimes this can be a little bit stiff. Sometimes you got to sort of hold the figure at the thigh and kind of rotate it around a little bit there. That's nice and free and moving. Okay, let's, yeah, very stiff. Okay, let's go out to the side here. Easy side kick, should we want to. Very easy to move there. Now, it is a little bit tight to get in here in terms of the attachment for the legs. I'll try the other side perhaps. I'm being very careful. I don't like holding on to the back of the soft goods if I can. That's very tight. I can go out to the side, but I don't know that I really want to stress that too much. I don't think of her as kicking a lot, to be honest. Very tight. Normally I like to just test out all of the articulation angles, but sometimes it just really feels like there's just a little bit of a risk of breaking your new toy, and I'm just a little bit anxious about how tight that was at the shoulders and at the hips. So I'm just going to test out. So the sculpting is going to hit there, so that's about as high at the knee as we're going to get, and we're going to get there with the ankles. Nice tip there. Just got some fluff, and then there, very nice. So I think for the most part she's going to be standing up pretty straight at the forge. I know she's got her jetpack on that we're going to pop on very shortly, but yeah, that's just a bit of a bother with her legs. I don't know why I can't see what's stopping. It's just very tight. I think maybe it is the plastic. It's just very tight. I can't get the legs to move very much, and I don't want to break anything here. Very tight. Okay, but she's going to be standing up mostly. I'm sure some people that are a little bit braver in terms of the articulation might be able to sort of, or just maybe mine is just very stiff through the joints. I like how much movement I can have in the aspects that I want to, around the waist, at the elbows, and particularly with the helmet. So yeah, interesting that there's a few tight sections, but there's sort of reasons for that, I guess. And I generally, if there's a skirt or anything with a split, I'm not going to put them in poses that I feel like that's going to stress open that gap. But yeah, I like the sculpting on the front of the skirt, just this sort of subtle ripple here in the front, instead of it just being sort of flat, you know, pleated section here in the front. I like that sort of little sort of crease there down the front that's sculpted into her skirt there. Very nice. And of course that fantastic detail in the back. So overall I like this figure. Of course I'm going to be very careful of the soft goods, but I love the soft goods. I know not everyone's a fan, but I think this one looks really cool. It feels so distinctive for her as a character. It's so unique amongst the Mandalorians that we see on screen in the series, so I'm really happy. So let's get her fully kitted out with her accessories. So I'm going to start off with her jetpack. So it's not the same metallic color as her helmet. It's sort of cast from more of a sort of a bronzy metallic plastic rather than being painted, but we do have some very nice painted detail parts there in terms of sort of the rockets at the top, and we've got this dark metallic gunmetal silver insert sort of sculpted piece there as well. We've got a nice shaped pig here, the sort of half circle, so it's only going to go on one way, which is always nice, which means you can't rotate it, but it does look nice and straight. We can see the shape of the pig hole there in the back. We're going to try and line that up as best we can through the fur there. Okay, so let's see, because I'm really hoping this is going to be a good fit. That's not going to want to sort of pop off, because there is a certain thickness to faux fur that looks really nice, and of course that's going to sort of force the faux fur section to sort of sit in a specific spot. I had to move it up a little bit, so it's going to sit more like that there at the front. Of course, there's going to be little differences between everybody's little section of faux fur, but I'm really liking how this is looking. I was a little bit worried about how that was going to fit. Sometimes the pegs on these are a little short, and faux fur has a thickness. I'd hoping it wasn't going to pop off on itself, but that feels nicely attached. It doesn't feel like it's going to just pop off on its own. Very nice. Very cute, of course. I was so excited to see that she got her own jetpack later on. So next up we have the most sort of distinctive tool that she has in terms of it being so heavily featured on the backing card. We have her metal working tongs holding that chest piece that Grogu has there, the sort of circular chest piece, and we can see that it has the Mudhorn signet there on the front. So I was curious to see how they were going to do that sort of hot metal effect for this particular accessory, and we have a very orange metallic copper finish there that's kind of airbrushed and fades out along the length of the tool there. So it is just sort of more of a flat color. It doesn't have sort of different hues to it like on the actual sort of image there on the backing card. But I'm hoping she'll hold this well, because I really want her to be holding this at her forge. And of course, perhaps the weapon that we think of the most when I think of the armor is this really distinctive sort of hammer tool. The first version of the figure also came with this tool, but it was in a slightly different color plastic. So I'm assuming this one is pretty much the same sculpt, just slightly different color plastic, but very nice, very thin. Of course, this one's got a little bit of a flex to it. We test this one. This one feels like it's more of a rigid plastic. Because it's long, I'm still going to get a little bit of a wobble to it, but I feel like I could snap this one, whereas this one, it feels like that's just bendy. So perhaps something about the metallic finish on the paint means they've made this out of more of a rigid plastic. This one definitely feels more sort of flexible. Let's see how well she's going to hold them. So I'm just going to pop the Grogu armor plate 1 in her hand. So she doesn't have, we don't see her use blasters. She does have an extended separate trigger finger on her left hand, but her right hand is more of a sort of a classic lightsaber hilt grasp, because most of her tools that she's holding are sort of more of a column shape, a rod shape. So I'm hoping that this is going to go into her hands nicely. It just goes in there very smoothly. She holds that really well. So that's kind of cool. I can rotate that around so we can see the shape there on the outside. And let's pop her sort of hammer in her other hand. A little bit more of a thinner fit there, but she does hold on to that okay. It's got a much sort of thinner sort of rod section there, but pretty cool. That one, it does feel like that one's going to pop out of her hands a little bit more easily there, but she's going to hold it. I feel like if I touch it, I might pull it out of her hands a little bit easier, but easy to hold. And I'm sure this is going to be a lot of fun to sort of pose her in a bit of a metal working pose with her forged diorama. Now, I did play around with her ankles and her legs a little bit, and she does stand up pretty well. That's always a concern for me, because of course I don't like figures tipping over too much. I want them to stand where I want them to, and she is balancing pretty well, even though I've put a jetpack on and her tools. Possibly tweak her feet a little bit to get her to stand up just completely straight, but just playing around with her, she's standing up pretty well. So let's get the forge back in and see how she goes, because that tool box also has some spots for her to store her tools. So let's check that out as well. So now that we've opened up the armor figure, we now have everything loose and opened out in the packaging, because it was kind of interesting that some of the tools were included in that bag in sort of the playset packaging, and then 2 of the tools were inside the bubble card for the armor figure. So now I have all of the tools, because I thought it was interesting that on the instruction sheet in the sort of tool chest accessory, the hammer tool is pictured here sort of being stowed away, but the hammer tool was actually inside the bubble card with the figure. So I guess they're just assuming you're going to open up everything, but that wouldn't necessarily always be the case. So now that we have all of the accessories out, let's go back and take a closer look at the sort of tool chest here. So it opens just by sort of pulling open the side sections. There are some sculpted details there in terms of sort of looks like tools here and some clasps. There's some drawers here with some sculpted sort of handles there. Nothing is painted in these side sections though. They're just sort of sculpted there to sort of be in the back. The actual tool chest itself is all out of the same color plastic. It's also not painted, but we do have some really nice sort of texture in the actual mold of the toy. You can kind of see the sort of the dents and scratches and things like that. And I quite like the very subtle sort of metallic shimmer of this plastic. It sort of catches the light in a few places. I just like the fact that we've sort of got a little bit of weathering here. Of course, you know, sort of heavy machinery, heavy tools and things like that sort of getting banged around. Now, in the back here, we have got sort of 2 sets of hooks. We've got 2 close together up up the top and then 2 lower down the bottom. We'll test out putting some of the tools as indicated on the toy packaging. But this background here is actually a glossy sticker. So you could kind of see that it was going to be printed in some manner on the box art, but I wasn't sure if it was going to be a sort of a cardboard piece inserted there in the back or a sticker. Was I going to have to try and put the sticker on myself like some Lego sets? But thankfully it is pre-applied and it is nice and straight. Very neat around the edges, which is kind of, I like it. Sometimes if there's a lot of plastic around the edge, it kind of loses, you know, the effect, and it very clearly looks like a sticker. We've just got a little bit of a wider cutout around the hooks, but that's to be expected, and it's probably going to be covered when we put some tools in there. We've also sort of got a little bit of a cutout here for some imaginary drawers there. Of course, it's just a flat back. Nothing actually functions there. We do have a bit of a storage compartment here in the bottom, which is just, it's actually quite a secure sort of plastic catch there. It just sort of works with a bit of tension there, and I'm guessing, hoping that the rest of the accessories like the helmets and everything are going to fit in here, because it is essentially, you know, it is a play set. So let's get some of the tools assembled there. So I'm just going to just for a short while take the hammer tool out of the armorer's hand. I'm just going to lie her down there because I want to see how well this is actually going to go like it was pictured. Is that just going to rest there? Okay, it basically just sits there. It's not even really clicking onto it. I thought maybe I'd have to press it on, but it's just basically resting on those hooks. It's not even really, those are, yeah, it's quite flat. They're quite flat hooks. So we're looking at that close up. So it's kind of just resting there, because if I tip it up, it's going to just fall out. So they're not really sort of, it's not clicking into place, because this one's pretty thin. I thought maybe that one would sit in there. It's a little bit hard to see how these other ones are going to fit. I think they're just going to sit, because this is one of the ones that's pictured on the box. So that one fits in there just by a little bit of tension, really. It's kind of resting on the lower hooks, and that top hook here is just kind of applying a bit of tension, just gently squeezing the tongs a little bit closed. It's just kind of sitting there. Now that one, I feel like that one's going to be a little bit more sturdy. That one's not going to fall out. But if I put that other one back in there, that should look kind of cool. It's kind of going to touch a little bit fiddly. It's possibly designed for someone with smaller hands than I, but there we go. That looks kind of cool. It kind of works well with the printed sort of image of all the sort of pliers and hammers and tools like that at the top. It gives it a little bit more of a 3D texture there. So if we were to assume that those tools are going to be there, I just want to see how well perhaps we could store the other tools down in the underside here. I don't think that one's going to fit. It might fit if I take the top off. I'm just going to very quickly see if that actually works. Just, yes. Okay, so the anvil section will fit in there if I take the top sort of components off, and maybe the helmets will fit in here as well. Okay, so yep, everything goes in there, and I could close that up. So we just have those two tools there in the top compartment, and everything's tucked in there away safely. So it does function pretty well as a play set there. Of course, as an older collector, this is going to be more of a diorama for my action figure display. So I'm just going to pop all of those back out. Who knows, maybe I will use that component for putting in some of those helmets. The helmets are fun, but I kind of wish that they had like a little rack or something. I'm probably maybe going to put them here, because they do, I appreciate them having that sort of attachment knob, so I can swap them with other people. I know some people really want to build more Mandalorians for the sort of, to build a bit of a covert scene, because we don't have too many army building sort of Mandalorian characters yet. So that might be fun if you want to sort of mix and match some of your figures. But those sort of attachment knobs do make, especially the green and the red one, sit to the side, which a normal helmet would sit a little bit more straight, like the sort of the silver and yellow Bo-Katan style one does. But this is a pretty good option. I like the way that that's sitting there. And of course we can have the armorer sort of looking like she's, you know, got her a Beskar sort of oval there, ready to sort of forge it a little bit more on her anvil here. And we've got the other tools, of course. If I just move her out of the way, we saw on the packaging that we've got this sort of ring here around, which means that I can slide those longer tools in there, because I don't know if the one that they used for toy photography had that little bit of sort of the little mark where the sort of the flashing has been cut away from the sculpted sort of plastic component there. But if I put that sort of little scoop there, it does hide it pretty well, like that was where that was on the toy photography. And the other tools can sort of sit there as well. I've got those ones there, so I think this is pretty cool. I know for some fans, the overall beigeness of the sort of rock and sand components of the playset might sort of throw them off a little bit. There isn't any weathering or sort of texture detailing in terms of just, we've got the sculpting of the rock, but there isn't any kind of weathering to sort of add in a little bit more detail to it. But I don't mind it sort of being a bit clean and tidy there, and I think she looks really cool. I can't wait to start playing around with some of the sort of the scene setting there with the armor at her forge. It is I know we see her outside of her forge, but so many important scenes she is at work, you know, crafting Beskar armor pieces. So I just think if I was going to put an armor figure on my display, she needs her forge, and that's why I wanted this playset so much. I need to pop that little anvil piece away in the bottom part there. This looks really cool. I really like this. I know it's not going to be for everyone, but I have such fond memories of playsets. I absolutely treasure my Geonosis Arena playset from Attack of the Clones. I have the Mustafar Volcano. I wish I was as nostalgic around the vintage era ones. Unfortunately, I was quite young in the vintage era. I don't have any sort of childhood memories of those playsets, but the prequel era playsets I absolutely love. So I love seeing them in the modern vintage collection era. It's kind of a nice balance between playsets for younger fans and display pieces for older fans, and I see where the balance is. I thought I might have to attach all of these little blue flames. I thought I might be inserting them, so I really like the way that this is done, and I really want to try, you know, doing some photos with a light in there and kind of giving it a bit of a blue flame, a glow. I think that's going to be really fun, and I know some fans are going to be crafty and put some LED lights in there for their display, because I think that's a really fun one. I don't know if you'll be able to sort of do as much in the top because there isn't as much space in the top, but that'll be up to you. And I really like that mythosaur skull on the back wall. That really sort of ties everything together. I really quite like that. This is a really nice figure of the armorer, possibly my favorite one. I know there haven't been that many, but the soft goods component really takes this one up a notch, and I like the sort of the in the process of being forged armor tool here as well. Really cool. I was so excited when I saw that I was going to be able to get this one locally from Australia with free shipping to New Zealand. I thought I might have to source this one from overseas, and that really does increase the price, because I know this one isn't the cheapest, you know, it's a bit expensive for a figure and some accessories, but I really like it. And I do really want Hasbro to continue giving us these extra set pieces for display, because I really like them. Some of my figures are all lined up, you know, sort of in rows, but I do try to sort of scene build where I can, and something like this really does give collectors the ability to create scenes, which is just so cool. This looks really cool. I had so much fun unboxing this. So many components, and the actual forge piece went together a lot more easier than I thought. I thought I might be wrestling with some of those connector pieces. I don't like that sort of that snap, like you might break something trying to get the connector pieces to fit together. It all kind of just went in reasonably easy with just tension. So I feel like if you need to, you can probably disassemble it, but I'm going to be running off to go add this to my display very soon, because this just looks really cool. This was a lot of fun to unbox. I'll just pop that one in there. Looks so neat. lots of different ways to use this display piece as well, because of course we've got different tools. We can add in other Mandalorian characters to sort of really flesh out the scene. She does so many sort of important dialogue moments around her forge. This is just really cool. I'm so excited to be able to add this to my collection. Really fun. It's just when you anticipate something and you really hope it's gonna, you know, be available in your country and it's gonna live up to your expectations and your hopes, and when you finally get it in hand, it's just a really awesome day. Having so much fun with the vintage collection era, and I'm really excited to see that for us here in New Zealand, it's not too hard to get a hold of the newest range. And a couple of years ago, it was very, very hard to get consistent vintage collection items here in New Zealand. Hasbro has really improved and worked on distribution, and I hope that's the same for fans around the globe as well, because New Zealand's kind of a small country, so if it's improving for us, I hope it is improving for other fans as well, because something like this, if you really want it for your collection, I think you'd really like to get your hands on this, because this just looks really fun. I had so much fun. Thank you so much for hanging out with me today as I opened up another Star Wars vintage collection playset and checked out all of the details. I hope you have a wonderful morning, afternoon, or evening, wherever you are in the galaxy, and let's hang out again really soon for more Star Wars fun. May the Force be with you. If you're a vintage collection fan, I recently unboxed the Blurg and the Mandalorian figure set. That video is linked here in case you haven't already seen it, as well as a whole vintage collection playlist. This is the way.